All right, we're live. Welcome, everybody. We're going to wait a little while till some people come on. We're going to talk a little bit about some things that have happened this week with Bitcoin. And if you guys have any questions when you're on the live stream in the comment section, you can ask any one of us. You can direct your question to us, direct it to the three of us, whatever, and we'll be sure to answer in our best ability. We were talking before the show, a couple interesting things that happened. During this week, there was Sailor bought some more Bitcoin. They're over 500,000 Bitcoin holdings in for MSTR. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Like, that's a lot of Bitcoin. Actually, I have a question for you guys. Do you think there's any risk with centralization of ownership of Bitcoin? This is a question I get a lot when it comes to MicroStrategy. Do you have any opinions on that?
I think that, a lot of people are a little bit uncomfortable because they see someone like Saylor getting 500,000 Bitcoin. Soon the United States coming in, they'll probably have 500,000 or more Bitcoin over time. And the only thing that we can do about this is have more normies buying Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, Bitcoin's for everyone. It's fair game, and someone's got to be selling it to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to purchase it. And that's exactly what's happening. Whether it's OGs, whether it's people who don't really know what's going on in the space, they bought at 108K and now they're panicking getting out. It's all fair game. And I'm not super happy with mega corporations and countries buying up so much Bitcoin, but there's literally nothing that we can do because they're playing a fair game. They're not stealing anyone's Bitcoin. Well, the United States government did steal people's Bitcoin, but MicroStrategy, they're not stealing it. They're just buying it. And we're going to continue to see that happen. He just happens to know something that most people don't understand yet. And as more people catch on, they're going to try to say, oh, it's not fair. And not just to strategy. They're going to say that to individuals. They're going to say, oh, it's not fair. All these people, they have 50 Bitcoins. They have 25 Bitcoins. It's not fair. They were able to buy it when it was a lot cheaper. So, yeah, well, you called us crazy and idiots and psychopaths. So at the end of the day, you have to be able to have a forward-looking vision. And here we have the purchase right here. Again, most of it was MSTR share at the market. Some of it was Strike at the market, and I think that's cool. They also just launched another product. I believe it's called Strife, something like that. And they're going to also be using that to buy more Bitcoin. So this guy is an unstoppable machine. His Bitcoin nuclear reactor is going at full blast, and I will not be surprised if he gets to 1 million this year. That will be insane, but it's not impossible.
Wow, that's quite a prediction right there. Wow. Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting thing that he's doing. I mean, it is incredible that one entity has this much Bitcoin and that they've bought it with money. And yeah, they've created some very interesting financial products that allow other institutional investors access to Bitcoin with limited downside, limited volatility, limited upside, all sorts of different types of instruments, yield even, through dividends, through Strife and Strike, because they're preferred stocks, which certain institutions and individuals are only able to buy stuff like that. They can't actually buy Bitcoin directly. It's not in their mandate. So that's what strategies that they're filling that gap in the financial industry.
Yeah, it's absolutely impressive. Regardless of, I know there's always a little bit of controversy anytime you talk about MicroStrategy or strategy, but just in terms of them accomplishing 500,000 Bitcoin, that's huge. It's really going to put them as one of the most valuable companies in the world in the future. And then back to your question about, is there risk? I don't know if there's risk to the network. Maybe there's a little bit, not much. But the real risk that I really think starts to happen when you start getting these huge conglomerations of Bitcoin are you're basically creating a honeypot. So I don't personally think that the Bitcoin is going to be stolen, but it is creating more and more incentive for people to steal it. And while, like, I think a bad actor like in North Korea or a hacker or some guy on his couch, the chances of them getting any of MicroStrategy's Bitcoin is probably near zero. who's to say that maybe the US government won't get it at one day, if the government decides they want enough, they want more Bitcoin and they need to have it. So I think that's more the realistic risk, but do I think that's even going to happen? I'd say the chances of that happening in the next 10 years are very small.
Yeah, like a 6102. What's interesting, the 6102 act was the government basically taking individuals' gold, and they took it from vaults. They didn't really go to people's houses, knock on their doors, try to take their gold. So there is this, this past event that people allude to as being a possibility, and like you said, you believe it's a very slim possibility. I think it's almost, I think it's almost zero, because I don't completely rule it out or anything, but I think that it would erode the idea of the capital markets and fair law of the United States, and that is worth a ton to the United States to have people be able to set up corporations and business and not be stolen from the government directly like that, even if it's done in some way that is I mean, the government can justify their actions in some way is what I'm saying, but it's pretty unlikely, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I agree that it's very unlikely, and I think it's basically in our current economic environment, it's not going to happen. But if you remember 6102, that happened in the throes of the Great Depression, at its peak. If it was going to happen in the future, it would probably be in a situation where the government doesn't have any more money, is about to go bankrupt, the dollar is being destroyed, and all these Bitcoiners are feeling like we've just won. So that's probably when it would happen, if it did happen. And all you have to do to not be affected by that is just hold your own keys and you're good. You're absolutely good to go.
Yeah, it's not going to happen when all things are good, right? It'd be at the worst situation that would cause them to do that.
Exactly. And I'm not worried about it. I don't want to feel like I'm not creating FUD right now.
Right.
Yeah, and I agree. This is part of why Bitcoin education and stuff like this is so important. Bitcoiners are a lot harder to be duped, right? Since we typically search for the truth, we try to be free thinkers. And when it comes to the government try to take Bitcoin from an enterprise like Strategy, it really would happen during the next Great Depression or after the great print that's coming after they lower rates and have to try to bail themselves out in order to afford the refinancing of a lot of these T-bills. So in a financial crisis, what might happen is they might try an Operation Choke Point 3.0. They're going to be like, oh, the economy is really bad because of Bitcoin, guys. That's the next attack vector. Bitcoin made the economy crash. It's not going to make any sense. But to most people who don't study markets or understand money or understand Bitcoin, they would probably believe that narrative. And that's why it's so important to continue pushing Bitcoin education, helping people to understand not just Bitcoin, but how markets work, how certain parts of the current fiat system work. So that way, when stuff like this does come up, they're not totally blindsided and they just decide, oh, well, I guess it was Bitcoin's fault that my stock market fell and that my eggs are worth $50 a dozen now, So I think that's the big thing.
And people are already beginning to say, oh, when the next Great Depression happens, it's going to be Bitcoin's fault. People are laying the groundwork for that right now, which is, one of the reasons I'm so excited about doing this stuff with you guys. It's just to help explain that, no, it's not Bitcoin's fault that it's happening. It's the other system's fault. Bitcoin is kind of like the savior here.
Yeah, no, totally. Oh, we might have lost Gen Z there. We'll see. Maybe hopefully he'll come back. We got someone pumping some Trump coin. Trump coin is love here. That's pretty funny. I'm gonna throw up Trump coin's chart here just to show that Trump coin is not it.
Let's go, dude.
Sorry,
Trump
Matt
coin,
Assassin.
man. You know what I'm saying? I don't even have kids, man, but I went ahead and sold my kids' retirement funds and their college funds. I put it all in the Trump coin right there at the top of that green wick, right there at the top. Oh my God, bro.
77.
It's
You
gonna
bought
come back
77?
any day now. It's gonna come back. All right. Don't you guys worry. All right. It's coming back any day now.
Boy. Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, same with Picoin. Dude, people at my job pisses me off. It honestly pisses me off. I don't get mad at them, but I'm internally upset. You know, because I'm like,
Picoin?
you're telling me about Picoin and you're telling me about Fartcoin and Donald Trump coin. Like, dude, I just want to like, what are you doing? You know, like, are you a serious person? Do you take your life seriously? What are you talking about? This is crazy. Guy telling me Picoin's going to $100. It's 93 cents. It's ridiculous.
So Picoin was like some weird thing that you could get through your phone for doing nothing or something, and then they became public or something? Like, do you know anything about it, Gen Z?
To break it down in extremely simple terms so that we don't take all day on this, it was an MLM coin. Like, actually, that's not a joke or me being hyperbolic. That's a real thing. It was an MLM coin, and essentially it was trying to pitch the idea of, oh, it's really green and good for the environment because you can mine it right on your phone. Like, yeah, sure. So basically you produce something for nothing. Okay, that means that it automatically has no value, and the value is tied to hype. All right, sound familiar? That's XRP. And then, right, it was locked up for a period of time. They just went public. Of course, the insiders got to go ahead and get on the test net a week before it went public. Then the stock crashed, 80, 90%. People think, oh, it's going to come back. Then it crashes another 80 or 90% because, to be honest, you did get free money. You got free Pi coins. You could sell them on the market immediately. It only makes sense for you to dump them. And now there's certain people who are buying Pi coins because now it's available for purchase. You were never able to buy it before. Right. So they're buying them for a couple cents on Coinbase, and they're looking back at the prior price when everything was locked up. It was like, oh, well, it was like $80 back when it was locked up and there was nowhere to sell it. It's going to go back.
Right.
No. Also, the circulating supply is only 6%. All right. So there's 94% more coins to be released over time, and it's already down 99% twice. It went down 99% 2 times. All right. So if you don't understand how percentages work, this is a really good lesson. Something can go down 99% multiple times in a row. So that's my little spiel on Picoin. The guy at my job, literally, he's talking about how, oh, well, I don't know about Bitcoin, but Picoin. I just asked him, well, what can you do with it? And he's like, well, they're going to build apps on it.
Yeah.
Okay,
What does
man.
that even mean?
What does that even mean? Okay, sure thing. It's going to replace the App Store. I don't know.
Yeah. We got
Sounds like
Amway coin. Isn't Amway like some pyramid scheme or something?
Yeah, Amway is the granddaddy of the pyramid schemes. That they are
Okay.
so big. They have, I think in Orlando, I think it's the Orlando Magic Stadium is like Amway Center or something like that. Someone can check me on that, but they are the biggest and most most popular pyramid scheme in the world.
Right.
And then Dentacoin. I remember Dentacoin. Was
Dentacoin.
that for
I don't
dentists?
remember Dentacoin.
Yeah, that was a 2017 thing. BTC Moon guy, add that in the chat if you know the details. But I want to say that was a 2017 coin for dentists.
Oh, no way.
For dentist, like an orthodontist, they're going Dentacoin. This is insane.
Yeah, like
That's hilarious.
in the tech space, for better or for worse, dentists always have the reputation as like the dumb money. I don't know why, but everyone always rags on them that they are the dumb money that buys high and sells low. So
Right.
it made
That's
sense
funny.
to make a perfect coin for them, I guess.
Yeah, that's funny. One thing that you were mentioning there about Picoin, when it got unlocked out into the public and there was a place to sell it, the price crashes. This is actually something that happens to like every coin. I don't know if you guys follow or see anything online, but like when a meme coin gets listed on Coinbase or Binance, it's total exit liquidity. Like it's everyone just, you think that, okay, well, this is a good thing because now people can get it easier. People can get access to it. They can buy it. They can, there'll be a more liquid market, but really it's just like, now we can sell it to people. That's all that becomes like these, that's like a big catalyst that people hype up. Oh, we're going to get listed on Kraken, Coinbase, all these centralized exchanges. And then it absolutely tanks the price every single time. That's like a regular scheme.
I believe it. I remember back when I first got into Bitcoin that there was only 3 coins on Coinbase. It was Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. And when they went on and they added like their fourth coin. I forget which one it was, but it was a huge deal. And it meant that this new coin that they added was completely legitimate. It were like the fact that it was on Coinbase made it legitimized. And now I think Coinbase wants to add every single coin from Dentic coin to Fart coin to Pi coin or whatever else.
Yeah. Well, they're just about fees. Coinbase just wants to make fees. They don't care about any of. I think they know, actually. I think that Brian guy probably knows that what he's peddling is mostly trash, and that Bitcoin is the true innovation. I mean, he's made some positive Bitcoin comments in the past, but I don't think he like fully aligns with it with his company. I mean, if he did, I think they would go the Michael Saylor way, maybe not with issuing convertible bonds and stuff, but be a lot more of a proxy to Bitcoin specifically, and actually hold a lot more Bitcoin. They have like very little Bitcoin for the size of the company that they are.
Yeah, they are a fiat company, and
Mhm.
Brian is not dumb. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He was in it. I mean, he was in it so early. He started Coinbase. He was in it before
Yeah.
Coinbase even existed. He created it. So there was an interview with the CEO of, I want to say, Kraken, where he basically said, yeah, we know that they're all shit coins, but the reason why we are selling all these shit coins is to make more money to help promote Bitcoin more. That was his words.
Oh,
I
wow.
want to say it was the CEO of Kraken. It might have been a different CEO.
A different crypto casino. There's
Yeah.
many of them out there.
Here's a question. What do you think is a better business? Crypto coin casino like Coinbase or Kraken or whatever, or a fantasy sports casino like FanDuel?
Ooh. I don't have much experience with the gambling stuff. I could weigh in on that, but Gen Z, do you want to, maybe you have something on that?
Yes, because I love gambling. So, and again, gambling is like a thing where like you can let it like destroy your life, but that's really anything, you know. So like, don't go too hard. You know what I mean? Like, I just like betting on people that I already expect to win. You know, and then $20 is not going to set me back. You know. So, anyways, with FanDuel and stuff like that, I think that you can actually generate more BTC if you're putting those funds into your Bitcoin treasury, right? And that's going to become the name of the game for all companies. If you're not beating like the hurdle rate, or if you're not generating a lot of BTC yield, or if you're not able to convert cash into BTC, your company is not going to make it because you're not going to have any real money. So when it comes to like FanDuel or DraftKings or whatever, I think all casinos and gambling companies are going to do really well if they start to transition into Bitcoin, because they're already guaranteed to make money. That's what a casino is. It's just a place that is guaranteed to generate income. And you know, if they're funneling it into Bitcoin, at least on the side, they're going to continue growing. You know, it's really hard to operate like a Bitcoin treasury company like Strategy, because you have to start with a really long-term vision, and you have to kind of grow organically until you can start doing crazy stuff like issuing your own Bitcoin backed equities and stuff like that. Or something like Coinbase, where again, there's so many different regulations and licenses and stuff you have to go through, and you have to work on listing the right coins and not the wrong coins, and it's a whole mess. But I feel like both are highly profitable, but at the end of the day, if you're not converting into BTC, you're missing out big time. Coinbase is missing out big time. They could be a super mega company at this point, but they've completely squandered that opportunity. And I think that an endorsement of Bitcoin by the way of doing the strategy playbook, like taking all their money, putting it into a Bitcoin treasury, and then rolling that over and taking out loans to buy more Bitcoin, that would kind of invalidate all the other coins listed on their exchange. You know, like them doing that action would send a signal to a lot of the people who are buying all these other coins on their exchange. They're like, oh, why aren't they buying so much ETH? Why aren't they buying more XRP? Why are they making a Bitcoin treasury and not a Litecoin treasury? You know, and I don't know if they want to send that signal. Brian Armstrong kind of already blew that whistle by saying that the strategic reserve should be Bitcoin only. But if he were to take that step and put his money where his mouth is, because sending a tweet is very inconsequential, for him to take all of his money and put it into Bitcoin to back the company, that is consequential, right? Because you can only do that with one coin. You can't like diversify into like 100 different coins to back your company. That's stupid. So if they were to go full Bitcoin, I think that would not be seen too positively by all of their shitcoin customers.
Yeah. Just going to throw this on the stage here, guys. This is DraftKings with the candles, and this is Coinbase. This was surprising to me, actually. Coinbase is down negative 38% since IPO. Is that like seriously what it's showing?
Is it really?
Well,
That's
their
what it's
their
showing to me.
IPO was like highly overvalued. Like
Okay.
at least when they IPO'd, because again, they're not a
Yeah.
Bitcoin treasury company. They are a meme coin casino, which is not that valuable at the end of the day.
Right. Oh, their timing was really bad too. It was in
Yes.
April 2021.
Yeah, that's another
So
thing. Really bad
yeah.
timing.
And then yeah, so like DraftKings, crazy 313% since it IPO'd in 2019. So that would have been a great stock to have bought, basically. And the earnings is not bad. Like a quarter, each quarter they're making 1.39 billion. Their earnings are negative, so they have a lot of expenses for whatever reason, probably expanding and a lot of deals they're probably giving out and all sorts of stuff, and who knows, but like they're able to generate a lot of revenue at least, and then eventually turn that into cash flow, I'm sure, at some point.
So
That was surprising to me.
there's a lot of influencers going on a little tirades about sites like FanDuel and saying that they're bad for America, bad for specifically young men that are getting into them. Do you guys have any opinions on that? Do you think they're net negative, net neutral, net positive?
I don't know, like it's a little bit like, gambling is going to exist, whether it exists on like, whether it's harder to um get to it or not. I think maybe it is a little bit too easy to gamble. Like you just have to sign up for an app, and you can throw your whole life savings into it if you wanted. And gambling, we do know that it's extremely destructive. Like if you look at studies, it's it's one of those types of addictions. Like, people can do anything healthy or they can do it unhealthy. But if you look at gambling addictions, it's something that people are able to hide for a long time until they get to a point where they feel like they actually cannot deal with the amount of debt and amount of loss that they've created financially. Whereas, like a drug addiction is a lot harder to hide because you're all messed up on drugs.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of connection, a lot of study to mental health, suicide, even with gambling. I think it is a destructive thing. I don't know what you could do about it. Like, we should be allowed stuff. Free market. I'm big on the free market, but um,
Absolutely.
maybe it's a little too easy to access, or I don't know. It's just it really preys on our human nature, on certain parts of our human nature, and the people that design it know that. And I'm not sure really what the solution. That's a really big, hard question to answer for sure.
I'm just curious if companies like Coinbase and companies like FanDuel view each other as competitors or not. That's kind of, I would
Hmm.
like to see their marketing room and their SWOT analysis. But
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
actually a very interesting take. They probably do because they know that they're fans. Because if you're a crypto guy, you love gambling. You really do. If you're a meme coiner, you are probably addicted to gambling. Really quickly, what up? 88 stats. Let's go. Jor in the chat. We got Anthony Scaramucci. That's not the real one, I'm sure. That's goated. Shout out to him though.
No, it's
And
the real mooch, man.
dude, oh my God, let's go, bro. We official.
Yeah.
And Ver is saying that you should put our names on here.
Yeah, I was just looking at doing that.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
gonna
know
try
if
to
that's
figure that out.
possible. That way they can shout us out and ask us direct stuff. It shows up for me in terms of in the little corner I can see my name, but the people can't see it. But as for the gambling thing, again, I love gambling. I think it's kind of fun. Oh, let's go, let's go, let's go. Our names are there. And I just find it somewhat interesting. There truly is a rush of gambling, and as sad or bad as this might sound, it's very hard to beat the rush of gambling. Even a small amount of money, like $50. If you are watching a fight, if you're watching a game and it's a close game, you're really like, come on. It's almost like you're there playing. And people get hooked on that feeling because it's like a high. You know, you try chasing that and you have to use bigger and bigger amounts. I've never found that issue. I can use $20. Like I was sick on Saturday because my parlay died on the last leg. Leon Edwards got choked in the 4th round after getting ragdolled the entire time. It was disgusting. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna act like I was crying the whole day, but my mood was definitely affected for like 30 minutes because not only did my fighter that I wanted to win, he lost badly, he also lost me money. You know, so I don't know. When it comes to gambling, yeah, people can make decisions. They can do what they want to do. It's the same with drinking. It's the same with consuming illicit plants, right? You know, stuff like that. And I think part of it is you have to be able to self-regulate and have a little bit of discipline and control yourself. Now, another thing I'll say is that in an age of fiat, we're actually forced to become gambling addicts because really all the gambling addict wants is they want their purchasing power from the future brought to them into the present. So when you hit the lottery and get $1 million over your lifetime, if you work a 9 to 5 and you make like $1,000 a day, then yeah, you know, you would gain $1 million eventually, but it's over a calendar year or however long you have to wait. You want to get all that purchasing power at once by hitting the lottery, which can only happen in the present. Right. And when you go ahead and you make 15 leg parlays, when you go ahead and you play dice every day, or if you play slots every day, or if you try crazy gambling stuff like scratch offs every day, what you're trying to do is you're trying to escape the rat race that you're in. And you don't think there's any other option besides guessing and gambling. And Bitcoin gives us an ability to be the house, right? We don't have to gamble anymore. All we have to do is become Bitcoiners.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. Bitcoin turns you into the house.
Turns you into the house. And I think that, you know, all of these, you know, I think again, it's like gambling is fine, right? Gambling should be allowed. All these substances are fine too. It's when people abuse them that it becomes a problem for the individual. And oftentimes people go down those roads of trying to of abusing something because they're lacking something in their life, and that they're probably lacking something in their life because of the fiat society we live in that has created a lack of hope, right? Feeling like you have to hit that parlay to be able to pay rent because your money's broken. You haven't been able to save anything. You haven't been able to earn in something that holds its value. I mean, I think if we fix these fundamental issues, the amount of problems from something like gambling would be a lot less. Like people wouldn't go so far down the road of it actually ending up becoming a problem in their life. It would just be something fun they do on the side.
So then do you think in 20, let's call it 30 years, when we're all hitting retirement age, do you think all the crypto coins on Coinbase and a lot of the FanDuel betting, do you think that becomes a lot smaller, or do you think it gets even bigger?
If we're on a Bitcoin standard, I think all gambling will shrink massively. There will still be gambling because now what you're going to try to do is you won't be satisfied with your Bitcoin stack. And you'll say, man, I'm never going to get to a whole coin. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my 0.25 coin and I'm going to put that on a 3-to-1 bet of roulette. Oh my God, imagine. Oh my God. Anyway, and they're going to try, gambling for sats. I don't think that's going to be as big because one, the risk to reward ratio, it literally doesn't make sense. If you really understand Bitcoin, that will not make sense to do. And then the second thing is that when you just save in Bitcoin, you really, again, don't need to gamble. Like it's going to make gambling so unbelievably irrational. It's already irrational to gamble. Like it's actually kind of stupid to gamble. And to be on a Bitcoin standard, it's going to be really stupid to do that. So I think it'll shrink over time.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, one thing that's very interesting about Bitcoin as well, I was just looking this up when you guys were talking. One of the, not one of the first, but it was, maybe early in the, it was operated from 2012 to 2014, a website called Satoshi Dice, which was a way to be able to gamble with your Bitcoin. It was like a use case digitally for Bitcoin when there wasn't as much use case as we have now. So yeah, it's just part of our history with Bitcoin as well. I wanted to throw this one up here before I went on. What do you, Gen Z? I'll get your opinion on this. Being a betting man, what do you think? There's free money. I mean, free money. I don't know. That's
I do agree with this because I mean, who's gonna? And you're a Canadian yourself. Who's gonna beat Pierre? I don't know if he has really any solid opposition. I guess they could rig the election. I don't know. I feel like Pierre is a pretty solid choice here. What do you think?
I think so too. I mean, unfortunately, okay, so we have this really crazy thing where we didn't elect our current prime minister. So we had Trudeau for a long ass time. He resigned, and they internally elected within the Liberal Party a new leader of their party, and he just becomes the prime minister of our entire country. So we did not say we wanted him as our prime minister. He just now is because our current one resigned. And he's former banker at former governor of the Bank of England. He worked at the Bank of Canada, so he's a straight up central banker. As soon as he got in, the betting polls like drastically skewed and went all over the place. Like Pierre was way above, and now since Carney is Michael Carney is the new Liberal leader, our current prime minister, the betting markets have Pierre at negative 125 odds. So I don't know. I don't think he's very popular. I couldn't imagine being tricked by this guy and voting for him. I think people will be, because people have we're a pretty liberal country in a lot of our like social ideologies and everything, and there's a lot of people that are just like anti-conservative party at this point. But it ends up always being a pretty close race anyway. So I think there's a huge likelihood that Pierre would win. This would be a bet that, yeah, I could probably throw some money down on. And I'm not a betting person, but yeah.
So you would put money that Pierre would win?
Yes, I would. I think that he'll be the next prime minister. Yeah.
And has he made any Bitcoin stances?
Yes, quite interesting ones actually. So he has this this talking point that he said a few different times about inflation, and how if you he has this analogy of apples. If you're trying to sell 10 apples and you charge $1 an apple, then that works, and there's 10 buyers. If you all of a sudden produce 20 apples, then you have to sell them for 50 cents, and he relates that back to dollars. And then also he has done a podcast with the owner of Tahini's, which is a local franchise in Ontario, and they are a Bitcoin treasury company, but they're a private company, so they're very public about Bitcoin. He paid for his shawarma with Lightning, and it was like a big publicity stunt. And he talked about Bitcoin being really great, and then they were like smoking shisha out of hookahs and doing this podcast, and they're like, the guy was like telling him about Bitcoin. He's like, oh, Bitcoin is great. And like he definitely understands Bitcoin from a few different clips that I've seen of him.
Do you see a Canadian central Bitcoin reserve in the future?
We drastically need one. I mean, Canada's fucked economically. We're worse off than America. We cannot export our debt as well as America, because everyone knows the loonie falls in value compared to the US dollar. So not as many people internationally want our debt. Per capita, we're actually more indebted than the States, and everyone talks about how America needs a debt jubilee and that it's unsustainable and all this. It's even worse in Canada. It's just a smaller number. It's not 36 trillion in debt. It's whatever, a couple trillion, but because our population is a tenth of the size, it's more per capita. Our growth is completely wrecked compared to the other like G7 nations. It was just disgusting. There's these charts. Canada grew at like over the past few years like 0.5% GDP, whereas other nations are growing at like 3, 4, 5%. Canada needs growth off the shelf like crazy. We need to open up our energy. We need to domestically start refining energy and creating products instead of exporting. We've just been a large exporter of resources. Our economy is really screwed. So yeah, we need Bitcoin. If we could buy growth off the shelf by having a Bitcoin reserve, it would make so much sense. But I'm not in the realm of thinking that governments do things that make sense. I think that largely they do things that are selfish for the individuals within the government, and they largely pretend to do things to help the people that vote for them.
Yeah, I unfortunately agree with you 100%. I think you're absolutely right. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, hopefully, I really don't know the first thing about Canadian politics, but if this guy is pro Bitcoin, I think that's at least one step in the right direction for Canada. And as someone that wants good Canada-United States relations, I love Canada. So
Yeah,
I'm going there in September for a wedding. I'm really excited. It's a great country.
nice.
Trump
Here
will
we got
rule
some.
Canada in the.
What's that?
There's a comment that says Trump will rule Canada.
Oh, okay. This is back to the betting here. This person says here, I only bet on crypto. Used to bet UFC, but it kind of ruined my viewing experience. So now I just watch and enjoy as a fan of fighting. I kind of thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's a true statement. All right, because when you have a parlay going and you know that the next fight is not on the parlay, you have no stress. You just get to enjoy the fight. You're like, yay, let's go, yay. You know, you get to watch your simulated gladiator combat with no worries, right? But as soon as the parlay is back on the line, everyone's like, okay, look, don't talk, nobody breathe. Okay, we need to lock in. Everyone start praying. All right, this is important. I've got $25 on the line. You know, so I'll never stop, man. It's just so good.
That's funny. Yeah, that's sweet. This person commented last week about that they were selling their XRP and buying Bitcoin. They were kind of in the transition of doing that, I believe, or they had already done it. And they're kind of in some XRP groups. So this is a follow-up in regards to selling my XRP. How I was treated by the XRP army. They were very supportive and not mean at all. That's kind of surprising to me. I've seen a lot of backlash from XRP people. So that is surprising. That's a win, I would say. That's nice that you escaped cleanly.
Huge win.
Yeah. Are you being sarcastic, Ver? All right. Was there sass in that message? I don't know, but I do hope that they were nice to you. I really do.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I want to know what he said specifically. Like, was it like a pro? Yeah, tell us more, Ver Hoofdy Floofton. That's a good name. I want to know, like, were you like pro XRP while you were selling, or were you in the mindset of like taking profits off the table, like kind of like that verbiage? But yeah, good for you. I'm glad you got all the support, and I'm glad you got a lot of money off of it. I think anytime we can do anything to make more money, that's typically a good thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just a few comments here about Canada as well. Polyev will win big. And 88 Sats Radio says Canada will be back. Lots of Bitcoiners created from 9 years of Castro. Nice. Yeah, I think a lot of Bitcoiners have been created from the decline of a pretty good country. Here we have a comment. We've had a couple comments from people in India, actually. This person says, I'm from India. India is the next superpower.
Well, they're the most populous country in the world right now. They have more people than China. They have a lot of tech workers. Yeah. So they became the most populous country in the world. They're growing. Very technically skilled country. Great food. I've never been there, but I love Indian food. And they really might be one of the next superpowers. They're growing, and I could totally see that.
Yeah, I actually did pretty well. I bought when I first got into investing, I bought XID, which is like an iShares ETF of India's. It's like an India company index, and it performed really well. The past few years, India has been growing their economy really well. I think it's kind of looks like maybe it's it grew a little bit too fast, like the not the economy, but the stock market. So maybe it like kind of needs to catch up, how that can happen with stock markets can get decoupled from the economy. But yeah, I mean, they have a lot of potential. That's why I bought it back then. XID.
One thing that India did a few years ago, and I don't know the super detailed specifics, maybe this guy in the channel knows, but I believe they got rid of small bills in order to avoid tax evasion.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a thing that a lot of Bitcoiners were saying is a perfect reason why you needed Bitcoin, because people were hoarding small bills, and all of a sudden all the money was quickly becoming worthless, and people were standing in banks because you could only deposit a certain amount each day. And that was just a clear reason that if you hold your Bitcoin, it will never become worthless. The government can never decide that certain bills you're holding no longer contain value. So, yeah, just something India did a few years ago. But
It's crazy to me to think that we just hold this money and currency that's completely controlled by the whims of people that personally I don't trust. Like it just doesn't make any sense. We need something that is completely devoid of a nation. Like we need a global currency so badly. Like it ends up being like global trade, for instance, nations between nations. There, it ends up almost being like a barter system at that point, because they have to rely on a certain nation's currency that they don't control, that somebody else controls. And it just really doesn't make any sense to have this technology of money that is inflated and just at the whim of something they don't have any say or control in, and that isn't programmed in issuance.
so at what point when you were first learning about money did you realize, why don't we have a global currency like Bitcoin, or even not even like Bitcoin, just why don't we have a global currency? Because that was one of the first things I remember thinking about as a kid, trying to send money to my family in Mexico and thinking, why can't I send dollars? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've thought certain things throughout time. I worked with a filmmaker in Kenya and had to send money through these remittance services that absolutely ripped us off with the conversion and with sending. And it's otherwise you have to do it through banks, and then it gets stopped and frozen, and like through the wires and everything. So there's been a few different things throughout my life where I've thought like we need something different. I can't exactly nail down like when I realized that Bitcoin was that. I mean, it's pretty obvious once you start diving into Bitcoin that this is a global base layer money that can serve commerce between nations. But yeah, I can't exactly pinpoint it.
Yeah, and same here. I was watching a lot of uh Antonopoulos, on the come up. He would talk a lot about
Oh,
how Bitcoin was global money, it's the internet of money, all this good stuff. And especially watching a lot of really early, and I say really early, it was early for me, some early Bitcoin University stuff where he was more so speaking about dollar debt, how the dollar debt is exported, all this other stuff. And you start realizing that all these other global currencies are actually getting destroyed faster than the dollar. The dollar is getting destroyed, but they're just the slowest horse in the race. And a lot of these foreign currencies are the fastest horses. They lose value a lot quicker. And yeah, it really doesn't make a lot of sense for other countries to have to bend the knee to a country that has its own currency and then exports that currency debt to you when they control the money supply. They control the interest rate of that money. It really doesn't make sense. So to have a predictable issuance schedule like Bitcoin has, and to have a global neutral monetary asset only makes sense. That's the reason why we had a gold standard back in the day. The only problem with gold is that it's just too hard to divide. It was a little bit too difficult to verify, and it was really too heavy. If it didn't have those problems, we would just be on a gold standard. But Satoshi found a way to turn gold into electricity.
yeah.
Nice.
Gold was the best money in history until Bitcoin came along.
Yeah. We got an update here from Verhoofd Flufen. They were totally serious. I've been in the XRP army for years, and they were very kind.
Question for
I love that. I love that.
50. Do you are a lot of people in the XRP army, do you think that they're going to follow your footsteps and sell their XRP and buy Bitcoin with it?
Let's hope so. We got Alan King here also with an XRP comment. I sold my Bitcoin for XRP. Wait, what? He sold their Bitcoin for XRP as well. I trust Trump and America First companies. We must trust Trump and I'm assuming XRP. I misread that with my dyslexia at first. I thought it was that they sold their XRP for Bitcoin. That surprised me there. I think they made a mistake.
Yeah, I would say first, Alan, I hope it goes better for you than I think it's going to go. But in general, the first rule of Bitcoin is don't trust, verify. So I think one of the big things that you'll see in the Bitcoin community is we tend not to trust anyone, whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden or anyone else.
They
Trust
also
Trump.
said trust Trump, and they said, okay, so we got a few different super countries here fighting for Canada. We got Trump will rule Canada, and then we got India will rule Canada. It looks like Canada's up for sale here in the comment section.
Yeah. Alan King, very high probability. This is a bot account. Also, I'm gonna be honest, this India account, very high probability. This is also a bot. I'm just being honest. If you're not, then I am very sorry, but you're typing kind of like you're a bot. I'm just being honest. And in terms of this guy trusting Trump and American companies, dude, Ripple is not an American company. You know what I mean? They have a lot of ties to Europe. By the way, again, that's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't know about Ripple, because again, nobody knows a lot about these weird companies anyway. Only thing you need to know about Ripple is that they never bought any XRP, and I think that's really interesting. How's that possible? You never bought any. That's kind of interesting. You know, I just find that kind of interesting.
They did buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course, because they want your Bitcoin. You know, they don't want their XRP. They didn't have to buy that. You know what I'm saying? But the Bitcoin, they couldn't print that out of nowhere. I'm just saying.
BTC Moon guy added Dentacoin as an American coin.
Let's go. See, that's America first right there, boys.
Well, what's funny about this is we were just talking about how we needed a global neutral asset for trade and just for security, right? So you can't get rugged by a nation, basically, which is what's happening. If you hold a nation's currency, they're rugging you, they're debasing you, and you have no recourse unless you sell it, unless you get rid of it and get into something else that you can't rug you from. And then people out there saying, "Oh, I'm going to invest in American crypto companies or their coins." It just makes no sense. It doesn't make sense to be nationalistic and have national pride when it comes to something that we need to be neutral. I think that's a big part of the appeal of Bitcoin, is that it doesn't have a nationality.
Exactly. And to add on to that, everything with Bretton Woods, when the United States ended Bretton Woods and took America off the gold standard, what that really was just a giant rug against the rest of the world, because the entire world had their money that was tied to the dollar, which was tied to gold. And it was always supposed to be convertible at a certain peg. And as soon as the United States said, we are stopping the convertibility of gold to the dollar, that was just a giant rug pull. That's all it was. And I mean, it is what it is. But when people have the opportunity to rug pull you, they typically do. So don't give them that opportunity. Get your own keys, hold Bitcoin, and they won't be able to do that.
Yep, absolutely. What else we got here? This is kind of an interesting one. COVID spending was the unequivocal proof that money printing is the cause of inflation. I think that woke up a lot of people. There was a lot of money printing. I mean, to me, it was just like people were getting checks. I was like, where's this money coming from? Isn't every nation in debt? Why are people like here in Canada? We had something called CERB, which if you could prove basically that you were unemployed because of COVID, you would get $2,000 a month. And I've known forever that the government's broke. Like we have all of this national debt. Where's this money coming from? How can they pay for this? So I think I wasn't alone with that. I think there was a lot of people that were questioning, where is this money coming from? And it was literally just getting spun out of thin air. It was being printed.
Yeah. And what happened when inflation happened and they started printing all that money? The Bitcoin price just went through the roof. And it looks like that's probably about to start happening again, relatively soon. Obviously, I don't want to make a time prediction, but this is one of the great things about holding Bitcoin is when you start to analyze the macroeconomic market, all roads lead to money printing. The United States cannot stop money printing. And people always talk about, mainstream economists at least always talk about, we can't stop money printing because then we would have deflation, and deflation is bad. In a Bitcoin type economy, inflation is not bad. But in a debt-based economy, which is the one that we're in, inflation is absolutely horrible. And do you know what would happen if the United States were to default on all of their debt? Most of your money that is in the bank would simply cease to exist, because all of the money that's in the bank is just IOUs that's based on American bonds. If America defaulted, which they can't, and they are started to become in deflation, then all of your money would just go poof. It's not there. Don't hold it in the bank. They don't have your money.
Yeah, the money in the bank is really interesting because, first off, for being honest, it's not money. All right. Two, it's not yours, and three, it's not in the bank. So it's like the Federal Reserve. They are not federal, and they have no reserves. So it's just really funny.
Well, it is money. It's a different type of money, right? It's IOU money, because that's the way our system works. It's just a bunch of IOUs. Do you remember that scene in Dumb and Dumber where he opens a briefcase that's supposed to be filled with cash, and it's just a bunch of IOUs? And then the bad guy says, "What is this? This is supposed to be money." And Jim Carrey says, "This is just as good as money, sir. These are IOUs." And then he pulls out one's like $200,000 for a Lamborghini. That's a big one. You're going to want to hold on to that. That's more or less how the financial system works today. And the people that study it understand it. And the people and economists, I think a lot of mainstream economists probably understand this too. And they realize that if the curtain gets pulled back, then everything becomes everything goes bad really quick.
Yeah, we went from having commodity money to credit money, and commodity money was gold, or it was the actual commodity itself. It even took form of certain types of shells that had some scarcity or rarity, and now we have credit money or belief money or fiat money that it's just the value is dictated from above. And we've seen really crazy cases, like even in World War II, the Japanese created something called invasion money. So they would invade certain places in in uh, s- uh, in Asia, they a nation or whatever, and they would take all of their commodity money and give them paper money that they basically the citizens there would just trade back and forth for commerce, because they still need to function and have a society of being able to buy and sell goods. So they would use this paper money, but there was no actual value to it, and the Japanese were able to just give them this paper money for their commodities and just take basically extract all the value out of these nations and fund the military expansion that they were trying to do at the time, which is basically what we have now with fiat. It's a type of invasion money.
Yeah. And
Dan, your mic's off, but
Dan, you are muted. But really quickly, I'm going to double down on that statement. The idea of my money in the bank, like you said, it's IOUs. So technically, that's not money. And secondly, I would argue that money, like US dollars, they're actually a currency, right? And then that's an entire episode by itself. I watched an amazing episode by Dylan LeClaire explaining the difference between money, currency, and how Bitcoin's actually both simultaneously. But like the sentence "my money is in the bank" is really, like, every part of that is actually incorrect, and that's absolutely insane. To think that something that seems so simple, so obvious, and so true to so many people is just not true. And more and more people are going to realize that. And unfortunately, we might need to have, again, like a great liquidity crisis or a COVID level printing event in order for people to once again get on that bandwagon. More and more people come in chunks. As a certain crisis emerges, more and more people start learning, they start understanding, they start realizing, oh, this is how things actually work. That's how you get like a cluster of people at one time to kind of get onto the Bitcoin bandwagon, or at least to get off the fiat bandwagon.
Yeah. So I feel like, that one song where it's T-Pain, I think he's saying, "I got money in the bank," like, ooh, ooh, wee. I think it should be like money in the bank. Oh no.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. You're getting scammed.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was going to add to that. You were talking about the invasion money, which I didn't know about. But are you guys familiar with the agri-bean money of West Africa?
Yeah. Which it was, devastating as well. Used for, they were able to use modern glass making techniques to make beads that
Yeah.
were highly valuable.
So essentially, Gen Z, what was happening was in West Africa, they were using agri-beads, which are beads that are really hard to make with primitive technology. And that was their money. And when the Dutch and Portuguese explorers began exploring the West Coast, they started realizing this. And so what they did is they said, well, we can make these beads really, really easily. So they went to, I want to say Florence or Venice, I think. They were able to get all these glass beads for super, super cheap. They brought them over to West Coast of Africa. And all of these local tribes looked at them as highly prized money. They thought they were very, very valuable. So then all of a sudden you have all of these explorers coming in. They're super rich because they just printed up billions of dollars, essentially gave it to themselves. And then they bought all sorts of actual valuable things with it. They would use it to buy ivory, gold, slaves, everything. And it completely ravaged the Western African economies. And they were able to do that for like over 100 years, I think. It was absolutely terrible. The lives and the societies that got destroyed by having the bad money. I think Safedine says something about this topic where Bitcoin is going to be adopted like gunpowder. If you're not with it, it's not going to be good, essentially.
You don't want to be the last nation to adopt gunpowder, that's for sure.
Yeah. You don't want to be the last nation
behind.
to adopt Bitcoin.
Exactly. Just a couple more questions here. We're going to wrap on the hour, everybody watching. So we're at 57 minutes here. If you have any final questions, pop those in the comment section. We have Verhoofdy saying that their entire life or their entire savings, excluding home and pension plan, is invested in crypto and Tesla. They have no money in the bank and only use their bank for paying bills.
Well, I think as if a lot of that crypto is Bitcoin, I think there's a good chance that if you hold it over the next coming decades, you're going to be a very, very wealthy person. So
yeah,
I hope the rest of it goes up for you too.
And we got the Mooch here saying MSTR went up like $30 today. You guys hold it too. I think Gen Z and I both are heavily exposed to MSTR in different respects. I have some options, some shares. All in registered accounts, which otherwise I would have it probably just in Bitcoin. But yeah.
Yep. Irresponsibly long strategy. Let's go. So everything's looking good. It was a nice little pop today. Bitcoin up about 1%, strategy up about 11. That's what we want to see more of. That just makes sense. But of course, the market is irrational. Sometimes you're going to get these crazy days where Bitcoin will be up 2% and strategy might be down 1% or something. But today was a decent day.
Yeah, Mara was up 18%, and I've got a pretty sizable position of that, a little bit more sizable than I'd like to have for the long term. So I'm looking for an exit on that, but 18% in one day, it's crazy. Yeah.
Do you have a number that you want to exit it at? Or
I'm looking for the high teens. I think it's easily going to get there, and I'll sell covered calls as my exit strategy. So I'll allow them to actually expire in the money. I'll sell like covered calls pretty close to in the money and start taking profits. I have hundreds of shares, so I'll be able to do like a staggered exit as it continues to ramp up.
And then are you going to buy Bitcoin with the assets or go buy a new surfboard?
I'm doing this trading account on margin, so I'll pay off debt with it and then use it for probably living expenses was the idea of this specific trading account that has Mara. it's definitely a shorter term time preference account that I'm like actively trading in. So yeah, maybe some of it'll end up in Bitcoin or something like maybe just MSTR even at some point. But yeah.
Cool.
Do you guys have any insight on this one? Just for the last question, is it true that China is unbanning Bitcoin as well?
They
I
banned
heard
and
some.
unbanned it so many times. I
Yeah.
didn't even realize this is a new thing.
Yeah, no, they're idiots. They do this like every like couple of years. They're like, oh, you know what? Bitcoin's not banned anymore, guys. It's okay. And then they're like, oh, you know what? We're gonna ban the mining. So they're just morons. They're bipolar. I don't really know what's going on. But I think everyone's going to start with the move towards unbanning, and this might be the last one. You know, because of the fact that we're seeing so much shift in the geopolitical landscape. There's a lot of countries that are legitimizing this. They're realizing this is actually a strategic asset. This is not some toy or some joke. So this might be the final unbanning. This might be the final like flip flop, you know. So that's always nice. You can never tell with these guys, so we'll see. But yeah, that was a little bit of a story that was coming out.
And what's FLD, BTC Moon Guy?
Yeah, here we go. Fold. So that's the company that gives you Bitcoin rewards for using their. I don't know. We don't have it in Canada, but my understanding of it is they have a
Fold.
card.
I've seen a lot of things about this, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that FLD was acronym.
Let's go. Let's go. What do
Yeah.
y'all know about that?
Yeah.
So they
Yeah,
actually
let's
have
go.
a debit Visa card
Yeah.
that you get rewards from.
That's
Yeah.
the one. That's the one.
That's sick.
In general, I would say BTC Moon Guy. If you can get Bitcoin rewards, that's great. But nothing, for at least to me, beats holding self custody Bitcoin. That's kind of where I'm going to go all the way in.
Well, you're able to transfer that out, right? Like you get sats back basically, and then you could send that to your own custody. Is that right, Gen Z? You would know more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, you can load it up with dollars. Then you can buy Bitcoin there. They have their own wallet on the app. When you buy stuff, you can get like Bitcoin cash back instead of dollar cash back or like flight miles. You know, that's for their credit card, which is dropping in the next quarter of this year. You can do like a round up. So if you pay $9.50 for something, the extra 50 cents will round up, and then you'll have that in Satoshis, right? So it'll instantly buy 50 cents worth of sats for you. I just think it's a cool little card. It's a nice little debit thing. I like it. I think it's interesting. Long story short, I don't think that Fold is going to fail. I think that it's going to be okay. But in my opinion, it makes no sense to buy Fold since that they can never catch up to Strategy. And they'll never be able to grow at the rate of Strategy. That's just my opinion. They might have a nice little pop on the next run up. They might have a nice little 100%. But if Fold is doing 100% pop, Strategy is probably doing like a 150 or 200. So we'll see.
Yeah. And in terms of the stock, I just get too many reminders of BlockFi. I'm sure there's differences.
BlockFi.
If you ask them, I'm sure that they'll come up with a million differences. But you know, I wish Fold the absolute best. I'm not buying the stock.
Yeah. I think what I like about the company is that it's a totally Bitcoin centered company. Their model is earning Bitcoin for their customers. It's not a lending product. It's kind of a reward system product. I do think they could face competition. I don't think that their strategy is really that unique. Like I think that other people could issue reward cards or I don't know. They're also only domestic, and I think internationally they would run into a lot of other hurdles that probably domestic companies within those other jurisdictions would be able to create products like just knock off Fold, basically, like Fold Canada, but not Fold. And then also, they did a reverse merger, or they did like a SPAC merger for their stock, and it like dropped like crazy on when it became public or fully merged. We've seen some recovery, but like even today, they're down 3.8% when what we talked about, like other Bitcoin derivative type companies are up 10 to 18%. Even Semler's up 9%. I think, I mean, I hope Fold does well, and I think that they're doing good stuff. They've probably orange pilled a ton of people, because people are like, there's all sorts of people out there that just try to get as much like credit card rewards as possible. that don't care about Bitcoin, but then they're like, oh, I can use this fold card and get like Bitcoin, and then they have to learn about Bitcoin. So I think they've probably orange pilled a lot of people. And overall, I do think what they're doing is good. But I wouldn't necessarily be an investor personally.
Yeah. And then, well put. And then one last question, and I think, what we could finish up. But DeVito Dom says, "Hi, I'm pretty new to learning about the Bitcoin network. My sats are still on an exchange, debating between Trezor BTC Edition or Cold Card. Suggestions." That's a great question, I think. And I think the best part about this question is just the fact that you already see the understanding of, or you already see the need of moving your coins to self custody. I'll tell you this because I don't want to say Trezor or Cold Card. I know they both have good they both have good reputations. But what I would say, if you're new, focus on studying. I don't think it's a giant rush. You want to do it as quickly as possible, but just do everything slowly. Make sure that you feel really, really comfortable when moving your stuff to self custody, because you want to do it right, and you don't want to be in a position where you do it wrong and you become one of these stories where people forget their keys. So do everything slowly. Make sure you're absolutely 100% comfortable. Depending on your stack size, it might be a fine idea to even do a hot wallet. I think that I had a hot wallet for the first, several years of having Bitcoin, and there were no problems with that. So just it depends on everything, but just do it slowly. Make sure you feel comfortable, and both Trezor and Cold Card are going to be great options for you.
I would agree. All great options. I use a blockchain Jade. That's what I'll endorse. I have no sponsorship yet, but yeah, Cold Card, Trezor, it's the Bitcoin only Trezor, and blockchain Jade. They're all amazing. So go for it.
Yeah, and I'll say something here. You already said that you use Electrum, which I think you can actually use that software, Electrum software, with I believe either of them. So you can connect a hardware wallet to the software of Electrum, just like you could with Sparrow. I've used both. The Trezor is much more simple, but it also is stripped down with its ability. It doesn't have a camera on it, so you can't do air gapped. With a Cold Card, it has an SD card, so you can actually partially sign a transaction on your hardware device. Take the SD card out, plug just the SD card in, so you're never connecting a device that actually has generated the keys to your computer. People say maybe that's a little bit unnecessary, but it is an extra step of security. So that's kind of what the reason you would go for a Cold Card over a Trezor. It's more complicated, but it has more functionality. And really, that's just depending on where you are at in your learning curve, where you're at with how secure you want to be and all that. And the other thing too is you're never really going to be bummed out that you bought one or the other, because you can always just buy the other one too, and that could maybe go towards creating a multi-sig at a certain point, because you're going to need multiple signing devices for that. Go with either and use it as part of your learning. There's a big learning curve in all of this.
Yeah, and he says that he's trying to understand UTXOs more. That's really, really important. I talk a little bit about UTXOs in my book. Quick plug: What is Bitcoin? Your first step down the rabbit hole. I'll also plug Andreas Antonopoulos' book, Mastering Bitcoin. That talks a lot about UTXOs. It probably is only going to be helpful for you if you have like some sort of software engineering background or like mathematics background. But if you want to get to the absolute core details of it, Andreas Antonopoulos' book is the best way to do it. If you want something that's more readable, check my book out. It's a great option for you.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. And if you did want one-on-one help, I do one-on-one Bitcoin consults for that, and I've helped multiple people get their coins off an exchange. That's definitely something I could help with. But it sounds like you're well on your way anyway, so you could probably just end up watching a few videos and figuring all of that out either way. But just throwing that out there as well. All right. Yeah, I think that's it, guys. We're past an hour now. Thanks both of you for being on, and thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys.
Yes, thank you all. See you later, and make sure you control your gambling habits. See ya.
And go subscribe to Dan at Bitcoin Reactions and Gen Z BTC. And yeah, we'll see you guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.